What is up, fam? Thank you so much for tuning in to So Real Sports Talk. We have a very, very good show for you today because I have not just a man, I have the man in Rob Shu here, blessing us with his presence. I was, thankful enough to be able to get on his show last week. It went so well. I think we're gonna keep doing this every other week. So next week I'll be in his show. This week he's on my show. So it's great to have you, Rob. How you feeling today?
Hell yeah, it's good to be here, man. I'm feeling fantastic because the 49ers are 2-0, my friend. So it doesn't get much better than that.
That's it. Hey, we are tied for first place in the NFC.
Yes, we
right
are.
there for that number one spot. One of the best teams in the league, according to our record right now. But
can't do much better than perfect.
That's it. Hey, you can only win the games that are in front of you, right?
That's right. That's right.
So speaking about week 2, obviously a game against the Eagles, solid victory. I think the Eagles are an underrated team going into this, definitely on the defensive side for sure, which I think we talked about last week on your show. But give us a quick little recap. Obviously the game is, seems like it was weeks ago, but it was only four days ago. Give us a little recap, Rob, on what you thought of the overall game between the Eagles and the Niners.
Yeah, I got to admit that I'm a little bit perplexed as to who this 49ers team is. I thought I had a really good idea of their identity coming into the season. I thought that it was going to be very clear-cut, dominant defense, top 5 in the league. I had that predicted, pegged the entire time. And potentially we still have a defense that can be tops, but week 1 shook me there. And week 2, an ugly in the trenches game like that, it left me immediately with some concerns. After watching the first game live, I go through it like a fan. I don't take any notes. I don't ruin the fan experience. I watch it as a 49er faithful. Mm-hmm. And I got to say that I was left a little underwhelmed by the game. But in going back and watching the game multiple times after and taking notes on what was actually happening in the trenches, I feel a little bit better about it. So those are the types of games that you have to win in a season. Season's long, 17 games. There are going to be some ugly ones. And I'll tell you what, looking back on it, it's a win. It doesn't matter how it happened. It doesn't matter if there were mistakes. It goes up on the record as a win in the win column. And that's really all you can ask for at this point in the season when the team is still trying to find their legs. I did think that we struggled a little bit with the mobile quarterback, but every team in the NFL struggles with mobile quarterbacks. It leaves me concerned for facing Seattle and Arizona, but that's weeks away. Let's go up against Aaron Rodgers first.
Right. I think you would love to see the 49ers just come out and smack up every team that they play. But let's be honest, this is the NFL. Everybody, and getting wins in the NFL is tough. Especially we did a breakdown of the NFC West. We don't think that it's going to be one team that runs away with this. It's going to go down to the last few games of the season to kind of maybe even place first place bye to not even making the playoffs, right? Because that's how good this division can be. So picking up wins against teams that you're supposed to beat is very important. So it's good to see that the 49ers are taking care of business, which is not something that we were able to do last season, right?
No, it's not.
Yeah. And I think the biggest takeaways that I had, Rob, and then I'll hand it back over to you, is the adjustments, right? So I think D'Amico Ryans crumpled up the wide 9 paper that he had in there, and he was just like, we're not going to use this anymore. And I think the 49ers defense looked pretty strong right from the jump, and they came in very well prepared. The rushing attack was okay. I mean, they're still getting gashed, but it didn't necessarily lead to points. It didn't lead, the 49ers are doing a really great job, bending but not breaking. And then when it comes to the red zone, kind of dominating, right? And not getting any points. So I thought D'Amico Ryans making that change was great to see, because we've seen coaches in the past kind of be stubborn with the way that they want to play whatever side of the ball they are and not make those changes. So seeing that from D'Amico Ryans, I think was good. The other thing was seeing the shift that Shanahan made from the first quarter to, this late half of the second quarter into the second half. He saw that defensive line was getting the better of the 49ers offensive line, and he made the shifts. He started pitching the ball outside, giving, dinking and dunking with Jimmy to the point where he was getting the ball out. It seemed like he just hiked it and he was throwing the ball, right? Really helping out that offensive line. And, they moved the ball, had two really great long drives, that put up the points that eventually, was enough to get the victory. And then Mitch Wishnowsky, seeing what he was able to do as the punter, I think was an extremely important aspect of this game, because having the Eagles have to do those long drives actually helped with the 49ers, because it seemed like they were able to get the first two first downs pretty easy, but that third first down ended up being pretty difficult, and the 49ers were able to get them off. And instead of it being a field goal attempt, it was a punt because of how deep Wishnowsky, kept them back. So those were my biggest takeaways from the game. How do you feel about those?
Yeah, I think you called out one thing very important, which is the idea that you can understand why 49ers fans are a little bit trepidatious about where we are as a team, because you're looking at games that when the schedule came out, people said to themselves, yep, the 49ers are going to win these two. Mm-hmm. So up to this point, they've just held serve. And so there's a lack of excitement, because people should be excited. 2-0 is the best that you can start, right? That's right. It. You can't get any better than that after two games.
Right.
But I understand that fans expected that out of the gate, and the wins were not overwhelmingly positive, and therefore potentially people are left with some questions. And I have some questions of my own. We're certainly looking at some death by attrition on the running back room. It's just unbelievable to watch so many players within one position group go down. So that's certainly a concern. You wonder who we have at wide receiver behind Deebo Samuel up to this point in production, because they just disappeared against the Eagles, and not necessarily a secondary that I expected to shut down our passing game. Potentially that was because of the dominance of the and the aggression of the defensive front for Philadelphia, and the shift in the game plan that you mentioned there, with Shanahan going to the wide, short passes, trying to get the ball moving. But I think that a quarter of scoreless football is not going to fly these next 3 weeks. You can't go an entire quarter just going 3 and out. And that was what we saw against Philly, a defense that may turn out to be great by the end of the year. But certainly going into it, I don't think it was anyone's prediction that they were a dominant defense. And so if the offense is going to struggle there, you would think that there are going to be some tough matchups coming up that we need to be concerned about. And, I thought that on the defense, the positive surprise, if I'm going to do a couple of negatives, I want to get away from being a negative Nancy here. I'm excited. I'm happy. The defensive backs, really, I had low expectations, and we'll touch on it later, but I was very pleased. The safeties, Jaquiski Tartt, Jimmy Ward, made some game-saving plays. So I thought that was certainly something to be excited about. And what we're really going to need going forward, if we have any hope of this defense remaining elite. We have the dominant defensive line. We had a shutdown corner who's now out for the year. So we need that average or above average play from his replacements, and then have that veteran presence with the safeties. I think that it's a potential recipe for a top 5 defense. I'm just not as sure about it now as I was at the beginning of the season.
Sure. I mean, when you have two of, your best starters out in Dre Greenlaw and Jason Verrett, obviously next man up is important, but it's a lot of talent to lose and still expect, great things. But that's what we do. I thought this was hilarious from Pinor. That is exactly kind of what we look like if we were babies. But before we move on, let's talk about just more specific about this game. Standout player. Who to you, I know you mentioned a few position groups that impressed you. But if you were to narrow it down to a player, who would be your standout player of this game?
Yeah, when I was going through here and putting my grades on the various position groups as I looked at this game in recap, the one that got the most solid grade was special teams. And I got to give the nod to Mitch Wishnowsky because people overlook the importance of special teams. The third phase of the game. I go back to the old school mentality where you win a football game when you can dominate on two phases of the game. And one of those can be special teams. People should look back and think to Ted Ginn on those 2011, 2012, and 2013 Niners teams where he really could shift the field. And, I think say what you want about how Mitch got onto the team. It's fair to question spending a fourth-round pick on a punter. That's an entirely fair criticism. It's fair to wonder, was he a significant upgrade over Bradley Pinion, who seems to be crushing it for Tampa Bay? Investing in someone who was a late comer to the game where he's already in his late 20s. And so his prime is going to have come and went early in his NFL career. All of those are fair criticisms. But look at the game on Sunday against Philadelphia. Look at the impact that the punter had on that game. I think if you took him off the field, we probably would have lost it. To your points earlier, putting Philly in difficult positions, pinning them inside the 20. To me, it was a game-changing day for Mitch Wishnowsky, and I've always been a fan, but I had to give him the nod, the NFC Special Teams Player of the Week.
Woo, I like it. We have some of in the comments, some guys being shouted out. Harold Murillo says Kinlaw came through as well with that blocked field goal. Definitely back to the special teams that you were talking about.
I want to tag in on that because I think that Kinlaw could be the difference for this defense throughout the season, because behind him in the interior, we're getting moved around. And if teams can run up the gut on the 49ers defense, that is going to be difficult to defend. But when you have Kinlaw in there, it is a different scenario. Kinlaw, DJ Jones, forget about it.
Yeah. Pinor, Tart for defense, Tart for defense, and Wishnowsky, Debo for offense. Yeah, Debo's been offensive stud for the last 2 weeks. But I'm gonna go a little bit different route. Demo Lenore for me. And the reason being, he had the one play, obviously, that he got burnt for, that thankfully the defense did their job and there was no points scored off of that. But if you looked at it, they kept going at him. And it was a tough situation for him to be in, getting thrown into as a starter, and not just as a starter. He was the longest tenured person in that quarterback room, because Norman had only been there for a week. So for him to be it as a rookie and hold as strong as he did, I mean, he saved a touchdown, we saw, because of his cerebral type playing and using the sideline. I think that was against, was that against Smith? I think that was against Smith. Or maybe it was against Quez. I don't know. But one of those speedsters.
Yep.
And throughout the game, other than that one deep ball that he kind of got turned around with, he pretty much kept the team and we kept those receivers at bay. And I think that is a really great sign, especially that he could handle all the pressure that was on him. I thought, there was this one play where Verrett and I think it was Ward against Detroit. It was that crossing play. And Verrett actually went inside when he should have gone outside, and it kind of messed everything up. And Hawkinson ended up getting a touchdown. That same play in the middle of the field happened between Lenore and Ward, and they played it perfectly. Ward, shadowed the inside receiver perfectly, and it ended up being an incompletion instead of a really big play that could have changed the momentum for the time and down that play was thrown at. I just thought Lenore played amazing, and I give him like a little bit more extra for just pressure, because he's a rookie coming into a situation where we're looking at him to be cornerback one pretty much in that game. And to me, he passed with flying colors. So I'm giving the props to Demo Lenore.
I like it. And I think it's well deserved when you look at coming into that game, what the expectations were, playing as a 5th-round draft pick in his rookie year, just his second game, with very little help on the other side, coming from a veteran who's only been with the team for under 2 weeks.
Right.
It was a tough situation to get thrown into, and credit to him for not allowing that big completion to throw him off his game, because that's a critical trait for a successful defensive back, is that short memory. You got to be able to forget that last play and move on to the next one. And it sure seemed like he was able to do that after giving up what could have been a deflating play.
Yeah, I agree. Let's go negative. Biggest disappointment.
Yeah, so if I'm going to go for biggest disappointment, this is maybe going to sound a little cold, and I don't intend it to be, because this isn't a production biggest disappointment. For me, it was the emotional letdown of Trey Sermon. Just having fought through the idea of being in a doghouse, being the presumptive second string running back, and then as a shock to most fans, I believe, not to even be active the first week, and then to fight through, put a solid week of practice in, and then come out clearly revved up. And I will say that I believe a little too revved up because of having to go through that process, because of potentially being put in the doghouse by Kyle. Again, I'm not wild about this entire idea of having a doghouse. I feel like human beings are capable of communication to a level where if you're unhappy with someone, like, hash it out, sit down man to man, get it squared away. These guys are too talented to have a message sent by sitting them some week when you see the talent on the field. So Sermon coming out, a ball of energy, and then that terrible injury, to me, that was just a real letdown. I am thrilled to see that it looks as if he's trending in the correct direction this week. He may clear the concussion protocol and be active for the game on Sunday. I think that that's a big plus if he is, but that was the biggest disappointment for me, was not getting to see what Trey can do. Right. Sermon, that is. The other Trey as well, but Sermon as well.
Watching Robinson Hill is greater than Thursday Night Football. My man, Amin the Dream.
Amin knows what's up.
Yeah, dude. That's the ultimate compliment. I appreciate that. Don't you think Kyle did that before the season, Rob? So I'm guessing he's talking about Trey Sermon in the doghouse.
Yes. And I do. I would suspect that prior to week one that there was some conversation that took place, but we don't know that. We don't get the access behind the scenes on those conversations that are taking place. And so we have to look at the tea leaves and sort of read it. My guess is that Sermon didn't know he was going to be inactive. It seemed like a surprise across the board.
Yeah. And I think that Sermon was picked to be paired with Trey Lance. And
that's entirely possible.
Trey Lance. And I think that Shanahan expected Trey Lance to beat out Jimmy convincingly, because that's what he needed to do for Shanahan to be able to start Trey with how well Jimmy's beloved by the team in that locker room. And none of those things happen. So I think that's why Trey isn't playing, because he doesn't fit Jimmy Garoppolo as well as he fits Trey Lance as far as the style of running back he is. So I think that it's more of a matchup thing. But if he does end up getting through the protocol in time for the game, I expect a heavy dose of Trey Sermon as well, because we're going to get into keys later on, but we all know the 49ers, if their running game is good against Green Bay, they're in a really good position.
Yes, they are.
My disappointment is I'm not going to put it on a player. I'm going to just say I'm disappointed in trying to figure out how to word this the best. The lack of diversity in the passing game. And what I mean by that is I see all of these high-powered offenses. Like, you see what Tom Brady's doing. And he has 3 stud receivers and a stud tight end. Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, Antonio Brown, and Gronk. You look at those four, like those names are incredible that's what he has on offense. And in week 1, Antonio Brown and Chris Godwin went off along with Gronk. In week 2, Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, and Gronk went off. And I'm sure in week 3, it's going to be another combination of 3. So 3 guys at all times are going off. Now, I don't expect the 49ers offense to be as high-powered as Tampa Bay. But it's not like our weapons are terrible either. And the fact that only Debo is the one that's shining in our passing game, I think our tight end could be just as good as Rob Gronkowski. George Kittle isn't that bad, right? A lot of people think he might be the best tight end in the league, right?
I'm told he's pretty good.
Yeah, he's not showing out, right? Everybody that has him in fantasy is pretty disappointed.
Yes.
Brandon Ayuk, I mean, last year against the Eagles in the same game against the same team, he probably pulled off one of the most electric offensive moves to score a touchdown that I had ever seen a 49er player do.
That was
He's
legit.
pretty good. There's this guy, Trent Sherfield, who we just saw eating people alive in the preseason, who everybody's talking about. This guy could be as good as Antonio Brown, right? Other receivers that are like well-respected. He's nowhere to be seen. So the fact that we have all of these weapons and we're just not seeing them utilized, to me, that's the biggest disappointment. Because, I mean, I understand maybe in week 1 because the running game was just going insane. So, Mitchell was balling out. So, okay, if we don't get the passing game going like crazy, I get it. We're just pounding the ball and we're scoring points. This game, we weren't pounding the ball very well. And we weren't scoring a lot of points. So why not get these guys involved, man? Really disappointed in the fact that we're not seeing the diversity. I know Steve-O Supremo said, Sherfield and Jennings got TDs. Those were their only catches in those games. So and they were, goal line type opportunities. So to me, that's not what I'm looking for. I'm looking for these guys to get, at least 3 to 5 targets, give them a chance to, get the ball in their hands and let's see what these guys can do.
Yeah, for everyone aside from Debo, who had 6 catches for 93 yards, the rest of the entire wide receiver core had 4 catches for 32 yards. That is not the type of production that you want to see out of what could be an elite group. I would agree that that's concerning, and you wonder if part of that comes from the type of game that it was. It was a very grimy, gritty game, and you could almost sense, in my mind, Shanahan tightening up a bit and going back to the old school mentality of, I'm not going to allow my team to make the mistake that loses us this game. If we can just remain conservative, remain consistent, body blows through the remainder of the game, we're the better team, we're going to come out on top. It seemed that he shied away from anything that could put us in a precarious position.
Right. And I get that, but when, right? It didn't happen week 1. It's not happening week 2. We'll see. I mean, if it happens against Green Bay, but eventually we're going to have to see a team that could put up some points. And eventually, if the defense sees you're only handing the ball off to Mitchell and throwing the ball to Debo, that's a pretty easy fix, I guess, for defenses. Eventually, we got to get, guys that aren't getting the ball. And, you might be right, but I'm just disappointed by it. Not just for anything else other than I really expected more from this offense. I'm glad that we're winning, but I don't want to just win. Like Tampa Bay last year, they didn't look like the best team in the league throughout the regular season. They got blown out, in a couple games. They didn't look like the offense was on par. But Tom Brady and Bruce Arians and Leftwich had a plan. They're like, we're going to use this regular season to get better and to get this offense to where we need it. So, hey, you're going to make some mistakes. Hey, you're going to lose some close games, or you might get blown out a few times because the offense isn't going very well. But how did that turn out for them when they turned into the playoffs, and how their beginning of this year is turning out? They are unstoppable, and that offense is running on all cylinders. And I really wish that the 49ers were doing that and like, hey, let's not just try to think of it in these week by week boxes where we're just trying to get this win. Let's look at the big picture, because I don't think it's just about winning games and making the playoffs. Maybe it is. Maybe Kyle Shanahan's thinking that, look, I need to make the playoffs this year, so I need to win every single game because I haven't made the playoffs 3 of the 4 years that I've been here. Maybe that is his mentality. So he is like, I just need to make the playoffs so that everybody gets off of my back. But if I'm thinking bigger picture and we have a chance to win the Super Bowl, which we all thought going into the season that this roster had the capability of winning a Super Bowl, well, the bigger picture is we can't just dink and dunk and win games every single game. We can technically, but eventually when we get into the playoffs or we play these better teams, if we're not on 100 as far as we could do multiple things, we're just going to lose. And it's not going to be necessarily because we don't have the talent. It's going to be because we're on step A and all these other teams have already gone through, step J of their playbook and gotten really good at it. I don't know if that makes sense, but that's how I kind of look at it.
It makes perfect sense. And while I disagree in the idea that I'm not disappointed with the way in which we came out with a victory on Sunday, I do agree with you in the sense that we need to be progressing as an offense to a point where we are putting up significant points. When you look at this division and the games that we're going to have to play against the teams within our own division and the games that we're going to have to play if we make it to the playoffs, I think that it's going to require an offense that can put up some points. It's going to require a bit of that blowing the top off on a couple of games and not just through the run game, in particular after having lost our home run hitter. I think that Jimmy will need to take the next step if we're going to get to that level, or we're going to have to see it from Trey Lance. And to your point, it has to be practiced. It's not something where the light just comes on. Now, I will also follow that up by saying Kyle is a gamesman, and I wouldn't be shocked if we see him open up the playbook on Sunday night underneath the lights, because I think he likes the attention.
Yeah, I mean, I hope so. I think we're going to need it because, Green Bay's offense is pretty good. So, but our defense is really stout. So that's why I think they could get away with it. And unfortunately, it's kind of like a crutch because the defense is keeping teams, scoring very low. So you can get away with just kind of winning by a touchdown or scoring 17 to 24 points, especially when the defense is, as stout as the 49ers defense has been these last 2 weeks. Harold Murillo agreed. I would like to see a more explosive offense, but it's not our identity. It's not the identity of the offense. Their identity is more of a run down your throat style. I think it's more on Kyle, however. Thoughts? Yeah, I mean, look, I don't expect us to be the Kansas City Chiefs. I don't expect us to be the Tampa Bay Buccaneers where Jimmy Garoppolo is getting 5 touchdowns in a game. But 2, 3, can we get, on average, 24 to 30 points per game? I think that, here's what my issue is why would these skilled position players come to the 49ers if you're never going to get showcased, right? And even a guy like Ayuk, who we think it's not like we believe, we have hope. No, we've seen this guy be electric all in his rookie season. For him to have 1 catch through 2 games and 2 targets through 2 games, averaging 1 target and half a catch, Rob, that is, I don't know, I don't know how we could be okay with that in my mind. That's like if Tom Brady and Chris Godwin is having no impact. Can you imagine Chris Godwin having half a catch a game? Not saying Brandon Ayuk is Chris Godwin, but I'm saying the talent level, you would expect a lot more. So I don't know.
I would. And I think it's something to keep an eye on, right? It's something that's concerning to this point. If they flip the switch and it changes against the Packers and moving forward, then we can just say, well, it was the matchups. But we're only 2 games in, and if the trend does continue, then you have to look at, well, what the hell's going on here? Because to your point, the talent seems to be there. I do think that a lot of things within the Shanahan offense operate off of the run, right? All of the looks come from the same sets, and you can do the same play that's a toss versus a play action shot deep, and that's what gets defenses off guard. If the run game is not successful, and if you don't have the horses in the stable to actually be able to move the ball, that presents a different set of issues for this Kyle Shanahan offense, right? You don't have the run game to base everything off of. I think that it was a matchup conundrum with the Philadelphia Eagles, but we'll see on Sunday whether we have a similar setup.
Right. And this is the argument that, I think kind of defeats whatever I'm saying. Steve-O Supremo, 2-0, haven't used Kittle or Ayuk yet. My fear is that just the offense now? I don't know. And let's get into it, man. What is going on with Brandon Ayuk? And let me pose a question this way, Rob, because I've been kind of putting it on Kyle Shanahan because I feel like I was looking for him to throw some maybe wide receiver screens to Ayuk, get him into some jet sweeps, let him be the electric athlete that we know he is. But when I watched, Grant's show with Jack Hammer, they were kind of saying Shanahan is running plays for Ayuk. It's that Jimmy isn't throwing him the ball. So do you think that the Brandon Ayuk thing is more of a Shanahan Ayuk issue, or do you think it's more of a Jimmy Ayuk issue?
That's a tough call. I think that you have to assign blame all the way around. I think that you have to look at each individual that you're talking about there and then examine why it is they have contributed to this issue. So I think that you have to start with the player. You have to start with Brandon Ayuk. You have to ask, how did he end up in this position where he was being questioned as the number one presumptive wide receiver on this team, the go-to guy? And that was with a less than stellar training camp and preseason. It was good, but not great. And we know that Shanahan has this theory about second-year players and really wants them to come in and prove themselves and show themselves to have this dog mentality and fight for it. And he doesn't want to see complacency. He doesn't want to sense that people feel like they've arrived in the league. So there's some blame to be had for Brandon in not coming in and performing the way he needed to perform to set himself up for success. But I also think you have to look at the play calling. And I think that clearly week one, that seemed to be the issue. Week two, I tend to agree that a lot of those routes were there, but the throw wasn't made. And so it's a combination there of the routes that Brandon is being asked to run are the routes that Jimmy throws less frequently. I'll never say that Jimmy can't make a throw on the field. I believe Jimmy Garoppolo is capable of making any throw on the field. Is he capable of making them consistently? No. There are throws that he struggles with. He can make them once in a blue moon, but they're not ones that you can count on him regularly to get the ball out there. So to me, it has to be that combination of factors. I think that you have to look at what has Brandon brought to the table, what are the routes and the amount of plays that he's on the field for, and then has Jimmy been able to get the ball for him? Admittedly, I haven't looked close enough, not having access to the all-22 at the moment, haven't looked close enough to definitively say of those, I think it was 30-some routes that he ran, that he was definitively open on X number of those. But in getting the summary from Grant and Jack's show, it seems that there were at least some plays left out on the table.
Yeah. I like the cop out, all of the above. That wasn't even an option route play. Hey,
I don't want to blame any one player, but that's the nuance in life, is that there's never one person, never one item that's necessarily guilty of everything. It's always a combination of factors.
You're being too realistic right now. So I'm going to go out of my way to say it's a Jimmy thing. And the reason why I think, when I'm looking back at last year and Ayuk that had, a pretty solid rookie season, if not a really good rookie season, he wasn't being thrown the ball by Jimmy. It was by Nick Mullins, who we know is a little more of a gunslinger than Jimmy, willing to take more risks. CJ Beathard was there, who also, throws the ball down the field a lot more than Jimmy. And Brandon Ayuk is more of a deep route runner and a deep threat than an inside type receiver like Debo is. So it's interesting that all of a sudden, now that Jimmy's back to being a quarterback, Debo is going off and having his biggest start to any season that he's ever had. And Brandon Ayuk is now nowhere to be seen, right? So to me, 2 + 2 = 4. If the equation changes, all of a sudden, X equals whatever, like calculus kind of stuff. But I really think that Jimmy, the type of receiver Ayuk is, doesn't mesh well with the type of quarterback Jimmy is. And the more and more I think deeply about this, because I drafted Brandon Ayuk in every single one of my fantasy drafts. Yeah. I think that it isn't. I think that if Trey was the quarterback, we'd have a different narrative about Brandon Ayuk. But Trey isn't the quarterback, and I'm not saying he should be the quarterback. All I'm saying is I'm probably expecting Ayuk to be less than stellar as long as Jimmy Garoppolo is the quarterback of the 49ers.
So you don't think that the two of them are going to get on the same page and turn this around? The prediction as of right now on the record is the idea that until we see Trey, there won't be that type of chemistry that we're hoping for.
I think it's not going to be the type of year that we saw last year. Yeah, it's going to go down as a disappointing season, which is going to be tough for Ayuk, because I think that he could have a better season if those opportunities were there, right? He's not a guy like the underneath route is going to go to Kittle or is going to go to Debo. You can't have everybody run the underneath route. So if you look at it, Ayuk is always the deep route. And if you have a quarterback that only throws the ball one time a game deep, which was Jimmy in 2019, it was a little over one time a game, and he only throws it when it's like wide open, he's not trying to thread it, you know what I mean? That makes your window of opportunity, if you're Brandon Ayuk, very, very small to be able to have much success. And yeah, my prediction is it's going to go off as a disappointing season unless Trey Lance gets in there, and then we can actually see Ayuk do more.
All right. Well, this is our first major point of contention here, Sunil, that I completely disagree in that I'm counting on Ayuk to have a breakout game at some point and the chemistry to start to gel. I think Kyle Shanahan is capable of scheming a player. I think that when he wants to get someone the ball, he does. I just don't think we've seen it yet. And it perplexes me and it frustrates me. And I'm right there with you. I have Ayuk in one league. Thankfully, I went heavy on Debo. And to this point, that has been very rewarding.
Right.
But I just think the breakout is coming. The talent is there. I do think that Shanahan wanted to send a message. I disagree with the way in which he decided to do that. But I feel like the message is sent at this point. You're hearing him walk it back with every opportunity that he gets, that there is no doghouse, that there are no droids here. Like it's just the trying to get us to think one thing. But I think that the reality in my book is this game sets up for that breakout. And if we go one more week without Ayuk having a big game on the show that we do next week, I will have to admit I was wrong. Because I think this is it. And we only have to wait a week to find out.
I hope I'm wrong because I want Ayuk to do well. I want the team to do well. Raymond Martinez Jr., my guy, great point, Sunil. He's on team Indian. El Murillo, it's a chemistry issue. Why doesn't Jimmy take the initiative to build chemistry with the receivers? That is a big criticism that Jimmy receives from others. And then Steve Supremo kind of answered. Ayuk chose to work out with Lance during the offseason, so how can Jimmy initiate chemistry? What do you think about the whole chemistry issue and maybe Jimmy reaching out to Ayuk and saying, hey, let's get on the same page? Do you think that's something that is happening, something that should happen? Or, you believe that the chemistry is going to get better, right? So
I do. Well, I think that winning cures everything. I'm a big believer in that. And so I think that as long as the 49ers can keep the positive momentum this season, I don't think that there will be fractures in the locker room. I don't think that the two quarterback system will be an issue. However, if they start to drop games, I change my tune on that. So as of right now, we're 2-0. So I'm sticking with the idea that winning solves everything. So I do think that Jimmy and Brandon will get on the same page just through that natural progression. Brandon Ayuk certainly did make the decision to go spend time with Trey Lance. He invested early. He may have done that thinking that Trey was going to be the starter this season. And that may still turn out to be the case, whether it is for 2 games, 12 games, or 14 games, right? You never know how it's going to play out. That time spent with Trey may benefit him later, but it did take away potential time that he could have been spending with Jimmy Garoppolo that clearly he wasn't. So I'm not saying that there's nothing to that. I just see the skill set matching up, that once Kyle decides he wants to use that tool in the tool chest, he will design plays specifically to get Brandon the ball, and we'll see the talent that we all know is there. It's just not being showcased. My hope is that he has been holding back a bit, that we will see an avalanche of offense on Sunday night underneath the lights.
Hey, I'm usually never the pessimistic one on any show because I'm Mr. Optimistic, but I love being out optimisticized by you, Rob. So
Homer.
Hey, I hope you're right. I'm gonna need some of your optimism on this question too. So can the 49ers bounce back from the running back injury? So let's talk about it. Let me preface or set this up for you a little bit. So we obviously know the offense for the 49ers is predicated on the running game being really, really effective. We saw Mostert go out in week 1, season-ending injury, and we saw Mitchell jump in and just be just as explosive or, good enough to where our rushing attack was still very, very good. Now, Mitchell is a little nicked up. Hasty is out, high ankle sprain. That's probably 4 to 8 weeks. Mostert is gone for the season. Sermon is in the concussion protocol. So we have Cannon. We just signed, a couple running backs as well. So the negative is a group that we thought was the deepest, where we let go of a guy like Wayne Gallman, who had multiple 100-yard games last season.
Yep.
Now we're, trying to find, I don't want to say the scraps because these are all NFL players, but
they are.
We're trying to find, whoever, from the people that aren't on a roster, right? So that's the negative. The positive is the 49ers have shown the ability to bring in people that you don't know or have been undervalued by other teams, and they could be extremely effective in this running scheme. So with those two sides of the pendulum swinging, which way does it go, Rob?
Ooh, that's a tough call. Let me first preface it by saying that I'm with you 100%. Even these, quote unquote scrubs that they're picking off of people's practice squads, let's put it in the correct frame of reference, which is these are some of the best athletes in the world, right? These are people that are tops of their craft. Even everyone on practice squads throughout the league. If you would equate that with whatever you are as an audience member here in your field, it would be as if you were the top 1/10 of 1% of whatever it is you do for a living. That's how good these people are. But relative to the starters that we lost, they are no comparison. There is a steep drop-off. When you lose Mostert, and Kyle Shanahan touched on this, you have to scrap some plays from your playbook because the other players that are replacing him just don't have the physical skill set that Mostert has in order to get around the edge at that speed. The way in which he can turn a corner within this offense is elite, and we will miss that. And to then have your depth tested at the position when you've already lost your number 1 running back, you have put your presumptive second string running back into the doghouse. So he didn't get any snaps the first week. And then he comes out and gets a concussion. Now he's in the concussion protocol. The guy who came out and crushed it week 1 has a, dinged up shoulder from having to try and force it into the end zone. Doesn't look like he's going to play this week. You're picking up Trenton Cannon, who is the special teams ace that got 1 carry on Sunday. I don't expect much from him. I think he's there to be a gunner and a return man on kickoffs. And then Kerryon Johnson, that's an interesting one. I'll put a pin in that and come back to it. But a previous second-round draft pick, so clearly the talent is there. I think it's pronounced Jaquez, somewhere like that. But Jaquez Patrick, big guy, a throwback to the Kevin Barlow days for the 49ers. He's pushing 230. Gotta love that. Yeah. And then another practice squad guy, and Chris Thompson, who anyone who plays fantasy football knows who Chris Thompson is, because he was a waiver wire pickup that could have won you your league in some of those years he had with the Redskins in PPR leagues where you're catching passes out of the backfield.
Football team.
There's some that's right, Washington football team. My apologies. It's crazy that we're looking at a completely new roster in the backfield. It's just nuts, the amount of turnover that has happened there. And so it was a deep room to begin with. It was an area of strength. But now we're back to being tested. We're back to Bobby Turner's ability to really turn players around and get more out of them, not only find the talent, not only find the gems, but be able to coach them up to the point where they execute within this system. So what does it mean for the 49ers in the long run? I still believe in this running back room. I think that we will get reinforcements back when Jeff Wilson returns to the team. That's huge. I'm not entirely beyond the idea of if we end up a playoff team with Mostert's surgery, I'm not entirely convinced that he doesn't come back at some point if it looks optimistic. This is the end of a contract year for him. I just struggle to see him staying out the whole year, but I know that's a pipe dream on some level. I just feel that with this run blocking offensive line, with the talented coaching staff, I have the faith that even with the decreased bodies, they'll be able to get the job done.
Yeah. I mean, we obviously, so here's, I hate to say this, but I think our success in the running game has more to do with the scheme than the backs. Case in point, two running backs that have left the 49ers since this whole thing has happened that used to have, pretty decent games with the 49ers are Tevin Coleman, who's now with the Jets.
Right.
And Matt Breida, who was averaging, 4 yards a carry when he was with the 49ers and looked like a guy who had all-world speed. And why would you let go of Breida? But what's Breida done since he's left the 49ers? What's Coleman done since he's left the 49ers with the Jets, right? And maybe Coleman's more, he's a little bit, longer in the tooth than obviously Breida. But I believe this running back room is going to be fine. I really believe that Kyle Shanahan and Bobby Turner know the type of running back that succeeds in this system, and they just pick them up. And as long as George Kittle is healthy, as long as Kyle Juszczyk's healthy, as long as this offensive line is healthy, McGlinchey, Mack, Trent Williams, I think this running back room is not going to skip a beat. And the reason for that is I think it's more scheme than it is, the talent there. Now, obviously, when you have the talent plus the scheme, you get Raheem Mostert, 10-yard average per play, right? But we don't need 10 yards per play. We need 3 to 5 yards per play. And if the hole is, if you're a running back and you're used to like having to cut multiple times to find a hole, and then you just have now one cut and, hit a hole, I think these running backs are just going to eat because it's going to be, the easiest reads that they have. Just follow Juszczyk. Just go wherever Kittle is, and that's kind of what I think we're going to see. And do I expect to see the 30-yard touchdowns, 40-yard, 60, 80-yard touchdowns that we could see from a guy like Mitchell and Mostert? Maybe not.
Probably not.
But I do expect us to see running backs that average 3 to 5 yards per play. And if you're averaging 3 to 5 yards per play 3 times, that's a first down. You're moving the ball. And I think that's more what we're going to see. And I think the running game is going to be fine.
I like that prediction. I think we're in agreement there. And you have to wonder with a clearly a talented player, Kerryon Johnson, who had the talent to be drafted in the second round. You wonder if it couldn't all click and come together for him in an offense like this that is, as long as you understand the concepts and the blocking schemes, you find those holes and you hit one cut gone. As long as you can execute like that, this is an offense set up for success for running backs. So you wonder if he'll realize some of that untapped potential.
I agree. So, yeah, man, look, the one thing that's been consistent with the 49ers is as long as the offensive line is healthy, as long as Kittle's healthy, as long as Juszczyk's healthy, whomever's back there running the ball is going to look like the best running back in the league at a certain point. Maybe not the best. Derrick Henry is pretty damn good. But I mean,
yes, he is
one of the top running backs, they're going to look like, hey, they should be number one draft pick on fantasy, right? So yeah, I think that we're going to be all right. Now, Rob, I don't know if you've looked at the time, but we're at 51 minutes and we haven't even talked about week 3 yet. So if it's okay with you, I think we should skip the fantasy stuff and let's just get into week 3 because I know we want to spend another 20, 30 minutes probably talking about this. So week 3, Green Bay, first home game with the fans, should be electric, right?
Yes, indeed. Sunday night football,
first primetime game, coming in with, Aaron Rodgers having a chip on his shoulder, something to prove. Obviously, this game last year was a dud because everybody on the team with the 49ers was in COVID protocol. So it was like third string versus Aaron Rodgers and Green Bay's first string. But we've seen in the past when, it's first string versus first string, the 49ers have dominated. So what are your expectations of the week 3 game?
I believe that the 49ers have the advantage here. I think that it was a good matchup for them coming into the season. I believe that it got a little bit worse through the injuries that we've suffered to this point. And I suspect that it will be a competitive game, even though my final prediction is not a super close one. I think that the pass rush eats. I think that we have a very deep defensive line. You have Aaron Rodgers standing behind a patchwork offensive line on that side of the ball. I've heard rumors that it could be the third string left tackle that goes for Green Bay on Sunday. And you have to think that Nick Bosa is going to destroy that man, that he is going to spend all evening just getting after it. Certainly the Packers will do what they can to scheme around that. You watch the 49ers in 2019 deal with a missing left tackle and do it spectacularly. But I don't have the same faith in the Packers coaching staff that I do in Kyle Shanahan and his offense. So I do expect the defense to be all over them early and all over them throughout the game. And I suspect that part of that will be anticipating some early runs on early downs by Aaron Jones and really coming up and challenging the Packers to come at them right away and shoot it deep. Hopefully we don't have a disaster in going against one of, if not the best wide receivers in the league. Devonte Adams, shout out Palo Alto High School. He's a Vikings alumni, as am I. We've got a lot of proud alumni. Jeremy Lin is Palo Alto High School.
Yo, when did this turn into a Palo Alto All-Star?
Yeah, you got to get the alumni shout out.
Let's keep going.
So Devonte Adams, I mean, I just can't see him not going off. I think regardless of what you do to him scheme-wise, like I said, he is one of the, if not the most talented wide receivers in the league. So I don't anticipate us being able to completely shut him down. I think statistically, fantasy football wise, Devonte Adams is still going to get his. The biggest challenge in my mind is certainly going to be containing Rodgers towards the end of the game. We just have struggled to close out at this point. It seems that we have done well initially, but our 4-minute defense has been atrocious to this point. So I think that's the area that we struggle. But defensively, early on, I think we get after Rodgers and dirty up that uniform.
Yeah, I mean, the keys to the game that we've seen, at least the first 2 games, is whoever wins the trenches wins the game, right? And So when it comes to quarterback, clearly Green Bay has the better quarterback. When it comes to running back, I would have to say with the injuries and everything right now, they clearly have the better running back. When it
Agreed.
comes to the most talented wide receiver, Debo versus Devonte Adams, probably going Devonte Adams, right? But the one thing that they don't have is as good of an offensive line, and they've had some injuries in their defensive line as well, as good of a defensive line. So I know you brought up the point that the 49ers have done well even if their left tackle went down. There's a difference between your second string left tackle and then a third string left tackle. That third string
Big time.
wasn't ever supposed to play left tackle. He was brought in as a guard, as maybe a swing tackle. But if he's in the left tackle position, your third string, whether it's Nick Bosa or if they put D Ford on that side or if they put Samson Ebukam on that side or if even Eric Armstead's on that side, that person is going to get tested very, very often. And we've seen this offensive line get eaten up. We saw New Orleans do it. We saw even Detroit had some success with it. We've also seen a very porous defense with the Green Bay Packers. They obviously got blown out by New Orleans, which then pretty much laid an egg in their next week's game against Carolina, right? Couldn't even score. They looked like all world against Green Bay, couldn't even score against Carolina. So maybe that's a tell. And then even the Detroit Lions in that first half, they were moving the ball with ease. So I agree. I expect the 49ers to be able to have a lot of success with this team. I'm with you too, though. We have to see how they close it out, right? So closing the game is going to be what's most important, not only because Aaron Rodgers is there, but they made Jared Goff look like he was a king, you know what I mean? With the way he was making his comeback as well. So I think that's important, playing 4 full quarters.
Yeah, that's an interesting point for both teams against Detroit was in the first half. I mean, it seemed to me as if the Lions were hanging around. I thought for sure there was a chance they were going to be in that game until late, and then the wheels started to come off, and eventually the talent started to win out on the field. But also the 49ers struggled with that at the end of game. So both of those defensive struggles could come into play on Sunday. I certainly believe that this is the game the offense gets rolling. The key injury to the critical pass rusher for Green Bay is a big loss for them. They don't seem to be all that stout against the run. Sure, it's fair to wonder who's actually going to be running the ball for San Francisco, but I'm more excited to see Jimmy with some protection, with time to throw, being able to actually get some serious air yards going down. I expect Jimmy to have close to, if not more than 300 yards passing in this game. I expect George Kittle to have a monster game. I expect Brandon Ayuk to have a monster game. And part of that is scheming against Jair Alexander. You certainly still have some studs there for Green Bay. But again, when we're talking about scheme, we're talking about Sunday night football. I feel like Kyle saves a little something in his bag for these games. And if he was offended by this little thing that went down between he and LaFleur in talking to Aaron Rodgers, doing his due diligence, there seems to be some animosity, tense moments that went down there, tested the friendship. Kyle's the kind of guy that I can see holding a little bit of a grudge and being like, all right, I'm going to show you tonight. Like you didn't want to return my phone call? Cool. Here you go. I'm going to hang up 30 points on you. Right. So that's, to me, that's what I expect to see out of the 49ers offense. And I don't know that the Packers defense is going to be able to do much to combat it.
Right. I mean, this is the first test, right? This is the first team that's playoffs team from last year, expected to be a playoff team this year. This is kind of like the stick, and as far as like the grading stick to see where you really land. And it's kind of like a benefit that the Green Bay Packers are coming in kind of limping as well. So it might be one of those games where, you could really go off like you're saying, or it could be another close game that goes down to the last quarter, kind of like what we've seen in these last two games. But there is a point that you made that I wanted you to go a little more in depth with. Devonte Adams obviously is one of the best receivers in the game right now. Even the backup, or even the second and third options that Aaron Rodgers has are still very capable receivers, and Scantling and Lazar, and obviously Randall Cobb coming back. Cornerback room has been a little bit pieced together, right, to say the least. We obviously know Lenore is going to be there. There is a lot of sentiment that Mosley's going to be back for this game, right? It's trending that way. He's practicing. So more than likely, it looks like it's going to be Mosley and Lenore as the top two corners. And then obviously Norman probably being next man up, and so on and so forth. Looking at this cornerback room, do you believe in this cornerback room? Do you believe in these cornerbacks? Or do you think that they're going to be a liability, especially in this next 3-game sprint where they're going to be going up against, top 10 receivers pretty much in every single game?
That's what I have here in my notes in regards to this question. Is the true test is coming. The true test is this 3-game gauntlet that we have ahead of us for the 49ers. You're facing Devonte Adams. I mean, what a great game to come back for E-Man, right? Poor Emmanuel Mosley comes back, and part of the assignment is going to be blanketing Devonte Adams. Good luck with that. That'll be fun. And then you have DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett the next week, and then DeAndre Hopkins the week after. So it is a incredible stretch for this team. My comfort right now against the Packers is the idea that Aaron Rodgers is not one of the mobile quarterbacks in the league. He can move around in the pocket, and he's slipperier than a Tom Brady or someone that's a true statue in there, but he's no Kyler Murray. He's no Russell Wilson. He is not going to gash you in that same way. He's going to frustrate you by getting out of the pocket and completing some balls, and he will occasionally, if you leave the middle of the field open, gash you for some big runs, but it's not going to be the 10 for 82 stat line that you get from a Jalen Hurts. So I'm left wondering right now, with an incomplete picture of who we've gone up against, do I trust this room? And initially, my gut instinct was no. My gut instinct was, when Verrett went down, that I needed to change my assessment of this defense, that it was no longer going to be a top 5 defense, that you need one shutdown cornerback, one cornerback who can go up against Devonte Adams and contain him to some degree. And then next week, he shadows DK Metcalf, and then he's on DeAndre Hopkins. Now we're asking, I would think, Emmanuel Mosley to shadow those 3 wide receivers, or more likely scheming around those wide receivers in an attempt to lessen the impact that they have on the game. And so my answer is nuanced and potentially not as exciting as it might be if I just said one way or the other. But it's sort of a yes if for me. Yes, at this moment, I have faith in this defensive back room. And that surprises me because, again, the gut instinct was no. But in thinking about it, what I realize is, with this defensive front, with the dominance of this defensive line, with the headiness of Fred Warner behind them, with the veteran safeties back behind the defensive backs, really all you need from your defensive backs is average to above average play, because within this scheme, that's what's asked of them. So with that caveat, yes, I have faith that these defensive backs, Lenoir, I need to polish up on my French to get that pronunciation going again. Lenoir is a very talented young rookie. I like everything I've seen from him so far. It's a very small sample size. So given that caveat, I'm saying, yes, I have the faith. And then I think E-Man, I've always been a fan. I didn't get fans who were questioning his skill set in the past couple of years. I think he's a talented defensive back. I loved him as our second corner. I'm not wild about the fact that he has to be our number 1 going forward, but who knows? If the rookie continues to progress, potentially we see that as 1 and then E-Man as 2. But the long-winded answer for me is yes, I have faith in these young defensive backs.
It's remarkable to think that our starting corners could be a 5th-round draft pick and an undrafted rookie, or undrafted in his rookie year in Eman Mosley. And I'm with you, man. I don't think this cornerback room is going to be a liability. And I'm going to go one step further, Rob. Against Green Bay and against Seattle, both of which in my eyes are porous offensive lines.
Right.
Our defensive line is going to make these quarterbacks see bodies in front of them at all times. And I'm expecting multiple interception games from the Green Bay game and the Seattle game from this 49ers secondary. Cornerbacks as well as safeties.
I love that prediction. Cheers to that.
I got you with my Gatorade bottle full of water.
Yes, sir.
And I think it's because, you know how they always talk about complementary football when you're playing offense and defense. Well, I think this defense has a complementary defensive style at the 4 different levels, right? So the defensive line is the bread and butter, right? If the defensive line isn't playing well, this defense isn't going to be playing well. So their ability to get into the backfield is the one consistent that we've seen out of all of these games, right?
Yes.
Nick Bosa's getting back there. D Ford's getting back there when he's playing. Contavious Street's getting back there. So against these weaker offensive lines, people forget how good the Eagles' offensive line is. They were porous last season because 2 of their biggest starters, it's like Trent Williams and Alex Mack being out. That's what it was like for them with Lane Johnson and Brandon. I forget the guy's last name, but they still got back there and were able to get Jalen Hurts to where he needed to run. He didn't have enough time to pass. So you do that with a less mobile quarterback in Aaron Rodgers, with a weaker offensive line like Green Bay has. I could see the 49ers getting five sacks and 2 interceptions from this game, just because the Aaron Rodgers is going to have to speed up and take some risks, which we know he'll do. And I think that these guys are cerebral. Everybody in the defensive back room are cerebral players that play positioning more than just being pure athletes. And I think they're going to be in the right positions at the right time and be able to maximize off of that. Same thing with Seattle. I don't think their offensive line is as good as our defensive line. And I think that they're going to be able, the Bosas are going to be in that backfield, make Russell Wilson, throw the ball a little quicker than he wants to. And I think we're going to be able to get some opportunities off of that. Not so much in Arizona, I don't think, but those 2 games, I think that we could see double-digit interceptions from this secondary.
I sure hope so.
I'm throwing out some predictions right now, baby.
I love it. I love to look forward into Seattle. I do worry that with the mobile quarterbacks, we just struggle so much. Not that everyone doesn't struggle, because every team does struggle to cover a mobile quarterback. That's the advantage of having a mobile quarterback, and why many 49ers fans would like to see our mobile quarterback out there on the field, because it is hard to defend. But in particular, our defensive line, with the aggression that they have, I sure hope that we're able to have that type of success. I do see it with Rodgers early. And I don't know if you see this the same way, but week 1, he looked checked out. Rodgers just looked disinterested in week 1. And even in week 2, when things didn't go his way, he shot some glances over to the sideline that had a lot of weight to him. There's some real hatred in his eyes. And there's some tense things going on between he and the organization. So I wonder if we get to him early, and if we frustrate him, and if he throws a couple of picks, I wonder if he'll check out a bit during the game.
Harold Murillo, 1 game at a time, Sunil, 1 game at a time. You're right, Harold, but I'm making predictions right now, and I think that's what I see. I think that if the defensive line, the games that the defensive line is able to dominate, and that's going to be against weaker offensive lines, which I think these next 2 weeks are weaker than what we've seen in the first 2 weeks. I think that the cornerbacks and the safeties are going to be able to get some turnovers, because that's been their focus. When Grant talked to Jimmy Ward, his number 1 focus was, I want to intercept the ball more this season. So I think they're looking for that. I think we've already seen Demo, be in positions where he could. We saw him in the preseason get an interception. So I think that, I think we're going to see some of that.
And there have been a few blitzes that just haven't gotten home. They were blocked up well by the team, in particular Philly, as I was going back through. And you would think going up against a porous offensive line like the one we're going to face going against Green Bay, that those blitzes could get home, could force the errant throw, could put Jimmy Ward in the position he wants.
Right. I agree. We'll do this one before we go into predictions because I know. Do you have any time restrictions? I don't know. We're at like 1:10 right now.
No, I can keep going for a little bit.
All right, cool. So let's go through this one. So one thing that we have kind of touched on is kind of like the conservative offense that we've seen from the 49ers up until this point. Well, this is the first team that we know can put up points whenever they want to, or have the ability at least to put up a lot of points. So do you think that the 49ers can beat the Green Bay Packers if they're running the same type of conservative offense that we saw, namely in the Philadelphia Eagles game more than the Detroit game? But do you think that that's a thing that could happen moving forward?
Can the 49ers beat Green Bay with this offense? No, absolutely not. What we saw on Sunday would lose to Green Bay in my mind. I feel that you cannot allow Aaron Rodgers to hang around. You can't have a 6-point game in the fourth quarter and give the ball back to Aaron Rodgers. That's not going to end well. He's got a lot of pent-up aggression against this San Francisco 49ers team.
Right.
And he is a magical player. And if you put him in a position to be the hero for the game, he's going to take it and run with it. And he's probably going to come through in the clutch, and the 49ers are probably going to lose in that scenario. But that's not what I think is going to play out. I think that the 49ers will flip the switch on their offense. I think that we will see a different type of attack against Green Bay. And part of that is dictated by the opponent, dictated by the simple matchup that we have in front of us and the type of game that's going to play out. But I think the conservative, vanilla approach, the run the ball, clock management, try not to make any mistakes, don't let Jimmy push the ball down the field. No, if that's the game plan, I think the 49ers lose.
Yeah, I think it depends on the running game because we've seen this team beat this team in the playoffs with Jimmy Garoppolo only throwing the ball 8 times. Right?
That is true.
Now, with obviously that was Raheem Mostert who had the biggest game of his life that game. But if this running game is dominating the way that we've seen them be able to dominate Green Bay, I think that you could still dink and dunk with Jimmy and still get away with it, right? Because we've seen it. We've seen it in both games that the 49ers have beaten and dominated Green Bay in 2019, right? So I do think that this could be another week where we see limited air yardage, I guess, to phrase it nicely, right? Where it's more of the underneath stuff and Yak Boys kind of are able to get maybe a little bit more. I still expect a lot of screens, a lot of slants, a lot of, wide receiver screens, tight end screens, things like that. But if this running game, because, hey, there's a possibility with our, maybe all the running backs are people that just got signed this last week, right? So if that's the case and this running game can't get off the way they have in the past, then yeah, we got to see Jimmy Garoppolo circa 2019 versus the New Orleans Saints, where he can air the ball out a little bit, and he's going to have to start utilizing all of his weapons. Can't just be Debo. It's got to be George Kittle. It's got to be Ayuk. It's got to be Sherfield. It's got to be Sanu. It's got to be Jennings. Even maybe some of these running backs out of the backfield, have to be utilized as well. We have to see the him kind of be able to compete with a guy like Aaron Rodgers. Now, my prediction is it's not going to be that type of game. My prediction is it is going to be the dink and dunk type style of offense, just because Green Bay's defense isn't that great. I think Green Bay's offense is going to struggle because their offensive line isn't that great, and our defensive line is great. So I really think that this is going to be another game where Jimmy Garoppolo, I know you predicted close to 300 yards and Ayuk's going off and Kittle's going off and Debo's going off. I don't think it's going to be like that. I think it's going to be a run-heavy offense with a lot of dinking and dunking, with a lot of yak yards, and it's going to be kind of like just a very deliberate type of victory versus just this huge kind of offensive explosion that I think people are hoping for.
Yeah, and that's fair. It's interesting that both of those seem like, both what you predict and what I predict, seem like messages that Shanahan could be sending to LaFleur of, well, it turns out I don't really need Aaron Rodgers, that I can either run it down your throat and beat you that way, or beat you with the less talented individual at quarterback with Jimmy G. So either way, I can still take you out, take you down a peg. It does seem that there's a bit of ownership going on between Shanahan and LaFleur. Yeah. Other than the one game last year that everyone was injured for.
Right.
That doesn't count because the Niners lost. But every other one that's mattered has been an ass whooping.
You're right, to say the least. Harold Morrill, keep Aaron Rodgers on the sideline. This is how the 49ers win the game. Absolutely. Look, the only person that we feel, and you've mentioned it, the only person that we really feel can beat this game or be the difference maker in this game is Aaron Rodgers. Best way to make sure that doesn't happen, keep him on the sideline. The best way to do that, run the ball a lot. So that's how I feel like this game is going to go. But before we say it, let's put it on the banner. Predictions, Rob. I'm excited to hear because I think your prediction and my prediction are going to be the same but different.
Totally different in the way it goes down, but same end result maybe.
Right.
Yeah, so I'm sticking with my gut, which is that, okay, so when I say that Jimmy's going to go for 300 yards, I don't mean that this is going to be all passing yardage. I still think the 49ers, everything goes through the run. It's going to be a balanced attack. I just think the success will be these large chunk plays that happen for the offense with the talented receivers and George Kittle at tight end. I think that you'll see much more of the 4 yards in a cloud of dust type of runs. But I do think that the 49ers will stay with the run game in order to control the ball, control the clock, and keep Rodgers off the field. I do think that that is a part of the plan, but that will then open up these big shot plays. And I see that happening for the 49ers on Sunday. I believe that the defense is going to be in relentless pursuit of Rodgers. Hopefully we see some long drives from the San Francisco 49ers to keep them rested, because I do feel that our first wave of defensive linemen are markedly better than our second wave, aside from Kentavious Street, who is having a phenomenal start to this season. I think the focus is going to be on stopping the run early. I think we hold Aaron Jones to under 80 yards for the game. I think Devonte Adams still goes off, again, because of those Palo Alto High School bloodlines that he has. 100 plus yards receiving and at least one touchdown for Devonte. But I still think that the 49ers control this game, that Aaron Rodgers is slightly checked out for the second half, and the 49ers come out with a victory on Sunday Night Football, 31-17.
Interesting. So I don't think that Jimmy's going to have anywhere close to 300 yards unless Debo catches a ball at the 5-yard pass and goes for like an 80-yard touchdown twice, right? So those are the only way that he's going to get anywhere close to 300 yards. I think this is going to be a game where they're deliberate with the run. I think they average somewhere between 3 and 5 yards per attempt, and they're just going to get first down after first down after first down, really hurt this defense that isn't very strong. And I think it's going to be a deliberate victory. I think that when Jimmy passes, it's going to be more the screen stuff, or maybe 10 yards down in the middle where Debo has been eating. I think we're going to still be disappointed that we don't see Ayuk. I think George Kittle is not going to have an overwhelming game, but he's going to have a lot of pancake type blocks.
Those are fun to watch.
Yeah, absolutely. And he seems to enjoy them as well.
Yes, he does.
I think Green Bay scores 17 points, like you said, and I have the 49ers scoring 27 points.
All
So I think
right.
it's still a two score type victory. But yeah, I had the 49ers winning 27-17 with it being a run heavy type offense and Jimmy Garoppolo maybe throwing for 2 touchdowns and right around 200 yards passing, and Debo probably going off. I think Devonte Adams isn't going to have 100 yards because I think that Aaron Rodgers is going to have a tough time in this game because he's going to have Bosa in his face. He's going to have Ford in his face. He's going to have Street in his face. And we might even see an Eric Armstead sack this game. So that's what I am predicting.
I love it. I love the fact that we have completely different takes on how this game is going to go down, but that we are both predicting a 49ers win as the homers and fans that we are. And, I'm a good 49er fan that I don't care how they won it, if they won it on Sunday. So if we come back here next week and I have to eat a little bit of crow and say that you were right in how the 49ers approached this game, as long as we won the game, I don't give a damn.
Absolutely. Hey, we're 0-for in the next week on our predictions, right?
That's
so
right.
Each week there's a new we start fresh. So
that's right.
Yeah, that's great. Well, Rob, thank you so much for being on the show. I do want to give you some time to plug what's going on for you this next week. Before you do that, hey, everybody, Rob's link to his YouTube page is in the description. Hey, this guy puts a lot of time in his production. He has some really great intros as well as thumbnails. I gotta say, his channel is primed to just take off. We need to support him. He's a really good guy and excellent 49er fan, and he puts out really good content. So that's my plug for Rob. Rob, please tell us where we could find you in the last half of this week.
Man, I appreciate that. That does mean a great deal. And yes, I would love it if you guys go follow me on Twitter. You can see it underneath me right there. The Left Shoe, play on words there. Really funny. I know, The Left Shoe. That's my last name, but it's also a shoe. And then my YouTube channel is Rob Shoe, SCHUH. New content coming out there. Like Sunil said, we've got a lot of media coming out. It's looking good. We got the crispy image coming. We got some good quality media. As of right now, the podcast is still unnamed, but it's a working title, and you're going to like it when it comes out, and you're going to like the intros and stuff that come along with it. So be there from the ground floor. Go there, subscribe, follow me. And right now, I'll have a show coming with Grant tomorrow on his channel. I have a regular show looking on Wednesdays and looking to add more content each week. I will throw out announcements for lives on my Twitter. So go ahead and follow there if you want to see the next show Rob Shoe puts out.
I love it. Yeah, guys, like I said, the link is in the description. So if you haven't yet, please go out and subscribe to his channel. The only thing, I have stuff going on, but the only thing I'm trying to plug and I want to make a big deal. So after every single 49er game, Rob, all of the content creators go to their channel to do their reactions and things like that.
That's right.
I don't want to do that. I want to give the opportunities to the faithful to give their reactions. So we started it last week. I didn't do a good job marketing it, so I don't think it got a lot of play. But each week I wanted to get bigger and bigger. So after the Sunday night game, when the game goes final, I am going live on this show. We are calling it Shout Out, I think, or Sound Off. Sound Off, that's what I'm calling it. Sound Off. And it's really a show for the faithful to come in, call in. You're going to be the face on the side where Rob's pretty face is right now. You're going to be giving your analysis of the game, your takes, scream it out if you need to. And I'm just going to sit here, listen, learn, and have some good conversation with you guys. Rob, I didn't know if you know that I was doing that, but that's every single game. When the game goes final, we're going to do Sound Off with the 49er faithful talking about the games, man. How do you feel about that?
Dude, I love it. I love people's natural reaction to football, the love that pours out of them, the elation that they feel after wins. It's why I love going to football games. There is nothing like sitting in a crowd of 65,000 people all losing their stuff at the same time. It's just something magical about it. And the same is true about that common bond of 49ers fans. So, yeah, it's great to hear people's opinions on why the 49ers were successful, what they struggled with, what they could do better, what schemes were visible on the field. But much more fun is knowing how you felt about a win or a loss. There's something about it, man. There's just something exciting. I'll tune in. I'll be there.
I love it, man. Hopefully you could call in as well. Guys, if you haven't yet, please subscribe to my channel. Look, if you don't know much about YouTube algorithms and stuff, your likes, your subscriptions, your shares really help guys like us who are not the big names by any stretch of the imagination, trying to be the small fish that turn into sharks in the game.
That's right.
Right? It really helps us out. Please subscribe, please share. And, we're going to keep doing our job, putting out content that hopefully you guys enjoy. Please be in the comment section. Let us know how you feel. And until next time, stay safe, stay hydrated, and have a beautiful, beautiful night.